Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Canadian Football Central, CFL content for the fans, by the fans. And Rick, we have one of the videos I have been waiting for. It is the West Final. The stakes,
this guy's been counting down these days.
Could not be any higher, as it is our arch rivals, our nemesis in the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
In other words, as Carter would say, round 3 between the Banjo Bowl and the Labor Day.
Yeah, because we forget it because we forget about the game the Bombers and the Riders played earlier in the year. Ding, ding, ding. No, seriously, I'm really, really hyped for this as the Bombers look to make it if they win this, they go to their 5th. That's right, 5th straight Grey Cup appearance in the Grey Cup game. And the Bombers look to get redemption. Whether that is against Montreal or Toronto, they look for redemption against either of them. And it's one of those things where I don't know what could be a bigger momentum boost than if you were to beat your arch rivals. However, we have to look at the other side of this, where you're Saskatchewan, you got 4 Grey Cups to your entire franchise's name, and you get upset in your own building on Labor Day. You do not follow it up in the Banjo Bowl. This is right in the middle of Saskatchewan's kind of struggling slump. They get it back going, though. Corey Mace looking to kind of carve out a legacy now for his first time as a head coach in the CFL, and he's being able to have a lot of success. This is why he was in the running. He's in the running against Jason Moss for Coach of the Year, and you know I think that if you're Corey Mace, you want to go as far as you can, and so you get past the Lions with a big 28-19 victory over the identity crisis BC Lions. And you go against Winnipeg, who has been, again, they've been one of the teams at the top of the mountain for the past few years. And you have an opportunity to change that and to really start what you have the ability to upset the status quo and see where you can get things going. I see that Rick just got kicked out. So I don't know why. I'm going to send him a new link, but he'll be joining up in here in a second. But there is huge opportunity for Saskatchewan here. And Winnipeg, they just have to keep going because they have the tools, they have the pieces. Again, they've been able to do it for years in a row for a reason. And it's because of the talent that they have on that squad. And that they've just been driven to just keep going and going and going. Of course, within the past week, an important thing to mention, or I guess a fun thing to mention, Travis Kelce on his podcast with Jason Kelce, rocking a Winnipeg Blue Bombers Zach Caleros shirt. And as much as I'm sure it would do great numbers if Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce came to a Bomber game, that would be huge for the CFL. Holy crap. As much as people would complain about it because of the overexposure of Miss Taylor Swift in the NFL. And I understand, and I'm not a Taylor Swift fan, but it cannot economically, it would help for marketing purposes. They would make a lot of money off of it. But just kind of a fun to see the Bombers getting a little bit of support from abroad. So.
Who cares about Ryan the Kelce's? What about the Wind, and what about Andre Pruitt? Should we make little wagers on them?
Well, Andre Pruitt has his friends in Mr. Chad Kelly. However, the Bombers have their friends in Mother Nature, and so They'll have to see, because as we found out in that last game, Mother Nature, Bomber fan, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where Shaun White hits that field goal and it goes flying off into left field, but you know that she's not a Rider fan because he still gets it through the uprights. And so I am so hyped about this game. First of all, if you haven't already, if you're interested, check out our East Final preview. between the Toronto Argonauts and the Montreal Alouettes, where we see if the Toronto Argonauts can hold on to their momentum they get in the Ottawa game, or if Montreal stamps their way back and looks to get a back-to-back victory in the Grey Cup final. And if you haven't already, make sure you guys leave a like on this video, share it around, and subscribe, as it helps out the channel. So if you're listening on Spotify, give us 5 stars. Rick, I'm done my shameless plug. You can talk.
I will say this. If Winnipeg does not win this game, I think that kind of puts a damper into the whole Oliveira for MOP. Because if Oliveira and Winnipeg win this game,
I disagree.
Then they can continue to make their push for him to be MOP.
I disagree, because MOP is based off of the regular season, and playoffs are irrelevant towards it.
Hey, listen. I'm just trying to state facts, because I can tell you.
But I don't think that's a fact.
But hold on. If Winnipeg, I'm just going to go off on a little stinge here. If Winnipeg did not make the postseason, we would not be having this discussion, because it would have been 2 players on teams that did not make the playoffs, and it would be a dead heat.
No, that's true. No, that's fair. I'll give you that. That's
true. But the good point is,
there's a difference between making the postseason, because that's regular season to make the postseason, and once you are in the postseason, whereas at that point you've what matters is for MOP is the lead up. It's not the act of the postseason.
All I'm saying is I've seen worse things happen where people were supposed to win things and they didn't win things. So
yeah, like last year's MOP between Brady Oliveira and Chad Kelly. Because
mind you,
is that even if you think Oliveira should win this one, let's be real here. If Brady Oliveira, out of this year's and last year's MOP, he deserved last year more, and not necessarily, and I think this is fair to say that last year the CFL got it wrong. They totally got it wrong.
So what are you trying to say?
Even Rider fans were saying that Oliveira should have won.
So you're saying that if Oliveira doesn't get it this year, then they got it right?
No, I'm saying this year you can. I'm saying this year it's a lot more even. And last year, I think Oliveira had it by a wider margin. I'm saying this year, I think it's within the realm of debate.
Carter's going to be like, with me at the game, I wonder what kind of shit talk Rick's going to be doing on the stream while I'm not there.
Oh, it's fine. Well, you know I'll be shit talking those disgusting riders.
I mean,
and I say disgusting to all of them except AJ.
To be honest, I could. This is one of those games where I could care who wins, because in the end, it doesn't matter to me who wins.
Well,
it does to you, but not for me.
It matters so much to me who wins, and there's so much at stake here for Winnipeg. However, and there's so much heat, there's so much temperature. However, the Bombers, unlike a certain team out west, sold out their playoff game and have packed the building. And we are ready for Saskatchewan. We are ready. Our building is sold out. We sold that place out. And I can't say that about every Winnipeg team. I love you, Jets. But the Bombers sold the building out, and it's going to be a rampant environment. Rick, you remember how loud they were against Toronto. Now imagine Saskatchewan in the playoffs. Oh, boy.
Speaking of playoffs, I'm going to do another shameless plug. Did you hear the news today?
What was the news?
Did you hear where they're going in 2026?
No.
They're going to McMahon Stadium.
Really?
That's apparently what the news is supposed.
Did they post
That's what the news is supposed to. So apparently, there's news on social media that the mayor, the league commissioner, ownership are all going to be in Calgary tomorrow. And obviously, you're not going to have the mayor there and the league commissioner if it's not for Grey Cup.
Interesting. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. There's a few other places I would have picked instead of McMahon
I mean,
Stadium.
it makes sense that it goes back-to-back West.
Yeah, no, I'm just I thought maybe Edmonton with the new
Actually,
owner.
no, that's 3 times West.
I thought
because you have
maybe Edmonton
BC.
with the new owner possibly, and then also a big building that they could make more on ticket sales.
I mean,
but maybe it's just because the Stamps hoping for a little bit of money, and then eventually they can build themselves a new building. So maybe that's what it is.
Stamps and
the Great Cup 113 or Great Cup 113 is a fundraiser.
I mean, Edmonton and Calgary, they both need new stadiums.
Yeah, but at least with Edmonton, like you have like good capacity at least, Actually, you have too good of capacity.
I have 2 more chances to win my game. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, my win goes the way that I want, because I hate depending on teams when they're out of your control.
Yeah, no, seriously, but
the teams that you want to win never win.
Yeah, no. But let's get into it here for for this game, because we've kind of talked about our conversation's gone all over the place, and we're 11 minutes in. Let's get into this.
Yes,
game.
Sir.
Let's start by, I think, looking at the matchup between these two teams this season. As it's fresh in the minds, and we'll look at all 3 games, which I don't have. Do you know which week the first game was?
Yes, I do.
Which
so, if I'm not mistaken, they've only played 2 games this year, correct?
3. No, there was a game earlier in the season.
So
week 7,
yes.
and then later.
You guys lost by 10. Yes.
So the Saskatchewan Roughriders won that game 19-9. This is I believe this is during the Bombers slump, because let me see here, because week 1 Winnipeg loses, week 2 Winnipeg loses, week 3 Winnipeg loses, week 4 Winnipeg loses, then week 5 they get their first win, but then
week 6 they win
and then week 7 they drop, and then after week 7 that's when the win streak really starts, and they just start going, because then they lose to Toronto the week after, and then afterwards that's when they really start going, and they beat like BC 25-0, and they just take off. They lose this game again, 19-9. The Riders play relatively consistent, put up a field goal in the first and second, then get 7 points in the third and 6 in the fourth. Bombers put up 3 points in the first and second, nothing in the third, and then a field goal in the fourth. So no touchdowns for Winnipeg in this game. If we're looking at kind of the stats from that game, Zach Collaros, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 266 passing yards, 20 for 31. Brady Oliveira with 49 rushing yards, and leading receiver is also Brady Oliveira with 80 yards, as this is at the point where receivers were not really getting open. Collaros' pocket was collapsing. He didn't have enough time to find them, and so he was getting sacked. But then also there were many times when he would just dump it to Oliveira, and then Oliveira would get as many yards as possible. And sometimes he'd be able to get a first down from that, and sometimes he wouldn't, because you wouldn't just be getting a 10-yard pass where you would have the first down on the completion of the pass. So it was not a system working very well for Winnipeg, because Castillo goes 3 for 4 with a 56-yard field goal as his longest. But I mean, the Riders were able to really set that down on them. Shea Patterson played this game, 17 for 25, 261 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions for Shea Patterson. AJ Ouellette on 17 rushes, 88 rushing yards. Joe with a really good game, 110 receiving yards. Brett Lothar was 4 for 4 with his longest at 41 yards. But the Riders overall played a well-rounded, consistent game, and that got them the win. And then the Bombers just took a little bit longer, but then they got it going. And that would be the first between the two of them. And then on week 13, they would play the Labor Day Classic in Regina, in Mosaic Stadium. Bombers win in a complete thriller, 35-33, where Brett Lothar at the end of the game goes for a field goal, and it's just too far for him. It was a crazy game where the Riders need to get back into it, where they get the touchdown. They need the 2-point conversion. They don't get it, but then they do get the onside kick and try to get into field goal range. But yep, they don't do it, and it just doesn't work for them. But just a crazy game where the Bombers and the Riders start up even 7-7, and then the second quarter, the Bombers put up a whopping 22 points. Caleros would get injured, and then would go out, and then Streveler would have to go in later in this game. This is when the Bombers really start rushing that ball a lot more, and the passes become very quick, very short, very safe, which was a risky strategy. Trevor Harris, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions this game, but was not able to get it done even against the handicapped Bombers. Rick, is there anything you want to say about these first 2 games before I get into the Banjo Bowl?
Not really.
No. But then, so they would follow that up the next week where the Bombers would win 26-21 against the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the Banjo Bowl. Again, historically, Banjo Bowl Bombers have done very, very well against Saskatchewan at home. And if there's anything that's nice about that, they could really use that in this upcoming game, but they can't take it lying down. And Streveler would actually play he wouldn't play, or hold on a second. Am I looking at?
Yeah, he plays in this one.
He does, but rushing. He doesn't throw. He gets a bit rushing, and he would grab himself a rushing touchdown. Caleros was back for this game despite getting roughed up in the game prior. He would go 24 for 31, 1 touchdown for him. And then on the other side of things, Trevor Harris, who is back for this game. Shea Patterson played earlier, but Trevor Harris played in Labor Day as well as the Banjo Bowl. He would throw 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 286 passing yards, 21 for 33. And man, when it came to the receiving game, Keon Schaefer-Baker, 120 receiving yards. And then Kenny Lawler on the other side with leading the Bombers with 64. And it was just the Bombers really, really dispersing their receiving core that game. As Lawler was 64, Oliveira was 60, Dembski with 46, 29 for Wolotarski, 24 for Ontario Wilson on just 1 reception. And then Clarcius even got a bit before later in the season then getting released by the Bombers. Castillo would go 4 for 4 with the longest of 46 yards that game. And then Brett Lothar would go 2 for 2 with a longest at 50 yards that game. And the Bombers would also, in this game, pick up a defensive touchdown off of a punt. After they would punt it down the field, Tony Jones drops the shoulder and just runs over Mario Alford. The ball comes loose. The Bombers grab it, and they bring it into the end zone. And so this was really when the Bombers' special teams was on fire, as in the Labor Day Classic. Kind of a bit of a similar play happens, except this time where Mario Alford doesn't really get hit, but the ball hits his hands, and he doesn't catch it. And then I believe it was either Nick or Noah Hallett jumps on it in the end zone, and they grab a touchdown just like that. So the Bombers' special teams was just lighting it up at this point in time. So if you're Saskatchewan going into the West Final, being very careful about the punt team of the Bombers is kind of something that I think could go a little bit under the radar, in the sense of that you don't see that in every game, but it happened to get in both Labor Day and the Banjo Bowl against Saskatchewan. So I would be shocked if Corey Mace isn't looking at a little bit of special teams film here for the Riders, as that has been, not going to lie, that's been a little bit of a decider. If you look at the score here, they lost 26-21. They gave up a touchdown on special teams. Now you can make the argument that maybe the Bombers would have run regardless, but again, that's, who knows. And even the prior game, they won by 2 points. So Saskatchewan with a win by 10 earlier in the season, obviously with a very, very similar lineup in for Winnipeg, but they really hadn't gotten their standing like they do now. I think it would be foolish to say that despite having the same lineup, that this is the same team in the sense of their performance as of recent. And they've just really, really ramped it up. They found their mojo that they had lost at the start of the season. And Saskatchewan, they've been a little all over the place, in the sense of that they had done very, very well to start the season, then lost that, and then kind of got it back, and they were able to use that against BC. Obviously, me and Rick drove to Regina to watch the Lions do absolutely nothing, and the Riders steamrolled them. And then they continued, at least with the pressure, and they were able to get the win last game. And now the West Final, where they're back in Winnipeg. And actually, let's take a look at the weather, because I think that's important, because Mother Nature, again, has made her presence known. Saturday in Winnipeg with a low of 3 degrees Celsius and a high of 12. And I don't see anything regarding wind necessarily. Talking about what the wind's expected to be that
give
day.
me 1 second. Saturday.
Okay, actually,
so
Saturday looks.
If it's
Saturday
so
looks
they have
pretty good then for wind.
So I'm going by the Weather Network, and they say that gust of winds are supposed to be go up to 15 kilometers an hour, and that it's supposed to be 10 kilometers an hour out of the south.
Oh boy, I actually have something a bit more radical. This is just from the weather app on my iPhone.
But that's during the day, though. At night, it's good.
Well, at night it'll probably get a bit bigger. So wind is estimated to be between 12 to 25 kilometers an hour.
Oh, at night it's supposed to be 23. Wind gust is supposed to be 23.
Up to 48 kilometers an hour.
Oh yeah.
Which looks like it's gonna be a windy day. Which, if it is,
it's supposed to feel like -5.
Which that could be something. Again, it's enough to be a bit of a breeze, probably a little bit chilly for some people's liking. But again, an important thing to realize, if the Bombers get the opportunity to either, because if Saskatchewan decides to take the ball at the start of the game, or if the Bombers win the coin toss, they will defer and they will take the wind in the fourth quarter. So an important thing to realize with
Mother Nature.
As he knows how much Mother Nature can be a factor. And it has worked time and again for Winnipeg if they're able to get the wind in the fourth quarter, as this is a team that has shown that they can come back in that fourth quarter and win that game. I mean, Rick, I'm sure you were watching Winnipeg versus Hamilton at the game that was in Winnipeg. I'm sure you were watching that on TV, where Zach Calero storming down the field and just barely beating the Ticats with a fourth quarter just march of the field right at the end. That last drive really, really changed the game. And so I think that's an important thing to look into. We haven't looked into that with these other games, but I think when we're talking about the Winnipeg game, and I think about the recent games, it reminds me of that Mother Nature is hopefully still a Bomber fan. That's my hope.
So let's just take a look at some of these numbers here. So Winnipeg is 6-3 at home. Mm-hmm. Saskatchewan is 4-1 on the road. And I honestly think this will be a closer game than the earlier game, because Bombers only edge out the Riders in the all-time in the playoffs 8-7.
Oh, damn close. Damn close.
Yes.
And so, there's a few things that we need to consider. Now, actually, I think the first thing we should consider, Rick, injuries. Injury report. We're 23 minutes in. We haven't done our injury report yet.
That's okay, because I was waiting for it. I'm like, hey.
Yep.
I have it on my screen.
I forgot about it, but I just remembered it now.
Bain Jr. is out.
Okay.
Jackson Ford, defensive back. This is for Riders, keep in mind.
Yep.
Jackson Ford, defensive back, out. Frankie Hickson, out. Corte Moore, defensive line, out. DeHonte Myers, wide receiver, out. Trevor Reed, offensive lineman, out. Joe Rosselli, wide receiver, out. So you have Brian Cox, defensive line. Colton Hunchak, former Stamp, wide receiver, available. Lehner, the second, defensive line, available. Miller Jr., linebacker, available. CJ Reeves, available. Keon Schaefer-Baker, available. Straker, linebacker, available. Deontay Williams, defensive back, available. And Noah Zur, available. So, on the Winnipeg side, there's no one out. There's 3 questionables.
Besides the only one that would be out is, of course, Dalton Schoen, who's been out all season, who suffered a season-ending injury.
Yeah, but Dalton Schoen hasn't been back practicing either.
Oh, I know. I'm just mentioning it in the sense of that. I feel like it's important mentioning in the sense of that he's still on the roster and he's out. That's what I mean.
No, I get that. I'm just saying, like, the ones that have practiced and that were here.
No,
Jamal Woods, defensive lineman, Brandon Alexander, and Kyrie Wilson are all questionable. That means that Randolph, Wanterpool, Pearson, and Sampson and Haba are all available.
Yep. Yeah, and so you got kind of some depth linemen there, both on your offensive line and your defensive line. And so, and that has been important for Winnipeg this season, as they have suffered some injuries, both with their offensive and their defensive line. So having those guys back in will be big for them. Even though Garbutt has been getting a little bit more time on that defensive end spot, kind of in the old Jackson Jeffcoat spot where we expected Haba to kind of be the full-time replacement. He's kind of shared that a bit with Garbutt this year, as he kind of went in a little earlier and has had some very good success there with Willie Jefferson. And so with if we're going to go through this, an important thing that I think we to go through is the last time, the last playoff experience for both of these teams. Now, I noticed, Rick, that you sent me last year's Grey Cup, which, as much as it is difficult for me to look at that, it is important. And actually, if I can get this to load, it's not fully loading very well. It's not behaving. Rick, the link you sent me, it's not really working.
What? Which link did I send you?
The Alouettes Bombers thing. It's just kind of glitching. Here, let me 20
loaded for me perfectly fine.
Cup. Well, maybe it's just my computer. 2023 Grey Cup.
Because it doesn't want you to go into memories.
Yeah, I don't know why it was having problems on my end. But I'll just look at the football database, what they have here. So the Alouettes would win the Grey Cup, obviously, against the Bombers by a score of 28-24. Very, very close game.
Bombers forgot to show up.
Bombers with 10 points in the first, 7 in the second, nothing in the third, and 7 in the fourth. Alouettes, 7 in the first, nothing in the second, 7 in the third, and 14 in the fourth to come back and win it.
Alouettes basically had 4 receivers. That's about it.
Now, if we're looking at passing here for both teams, Cody Fajardo, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception for 290 passing yards, and he would go 21 for 26. Zach Caleros, 19 for 23, 236. However, no touchdowns, 1 interception for him. Brady Oliveira with over 100 yards rushing with 119. William Stanback for the Alouettes with 68 as their leading rusher. Now receiving, this is where there's a little bit of a disparity here. Austin Mack with a killer game, 103 receiving yards for him. Kenny Lawler closely followed by Nick Dembski with 77 and 74 yards respectively on the Bombers side of things. And then Dalton Schoen's also in there, and Rasheed Bailey, and actually Jamison Sheehan is also in there, as I believe there was a fake punt, and I think that was kind of the result of that, if I'm remembering properly. Janarian Grant, returner for the Bombers, and then for the Alouettes, well, they kind of put the rotated guys. Tyson Philpott did for a little bit, James Letcher Jr., and then also Marc-Antoine Dequoy did for them. And then it was Sergio Castillo versus David Cote. Both were 100%, 3 for 3 for Castillo and 4 for 4 for Cote. And then I don't have any stats of how long Cote's kicks were for some reason.
Give me 1 second.
But longest for Castillo was 25 yards. It says 0 for Cote, so I know they just didn't input the stats. And then Evan Holm with an interception for the Bombers. And then I don't know if I see any interceptions. Yeah, Ento with an interception for the Alouettes. Because I was about to say, I know Claire's threw a pick, so It's important to see who.
And he got sacked 4 times.
Yeah. But and yeah, he does get sacked 4 times. But Bombers just had not played well enough, consistently enough, and then when push came to shove, they just kind of barely lost again, just by that, just 4 points in the fourth quarter. Now, on the other side of things, we have to look for the Riders here. Were they were in the 2023 playoffs? Were they, or were they not? I can't remember. Or were they not? Was it Calgary? Yeah, it was Calgary, BC. So then, were they in 2022? No, that was Calgary, BC again. Were they in 2021? Yeah, because in 2021, Bombers beat the Riders to get to the Grey Cup final.
5-4.
And they beat them 21-17. CFL playoffs, and then I'll just do West final because that was kind of when they met. And I could be wrong here. Was this the Cody Fajardo hit the uprights game? I'm trying to, you know what I mean? Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
It was in the playoffs.
I honestly
between Winnipeg and Saskatchewan.
Remember.
Winnipeg hosted this game. I can't remember if it was. No, it wasn't. It was 2019 because they were wearing their green jerseys. So that would have been, I think it was 2019 because I think they played against each other in 2019. But I think that was actually the West semifinal, I believe. Because I think Calgary won the... Or wait, what was it? No, that's not right. Yeah, no, I'm. It's funny. It's actually hard to kind of find what the record was for that. But whatever. Anyways, we'll look at 2021, where Winnipeg beat Saskatchewan 21-17. This is the last time the Riders are in the playoffs here. And if we're going to look at some of the player stats here, we'll start with the Riders here. Cody Fajardo, 19 for 27. 265 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Again, doesn't really matter. He's not their quarterback anymore. Zach Collaros, though, with Winnipeg, 17 for 21, 223 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. They were still able to win, though, with that. Both teams experienced putting up a fat donut. Bombers did in the second quarter, and the Riders did in the all-important fourth quarter. Winnipeg got a touchdown there, and it allowed them to win 21-17. Rushing yards, 136 for Andrew Harris. And then look at all these other names. Nick Dembski, Sean McGuire, Rashid Bailey, Zach Collaros with a little bit, and Mark Leggio. And then if we go into receiving, Rashid Bailey followed by Nick Dembski with 56 and 51 respectively. Kenny Lawler, this is before he goes to Edmonton, then comes back, 49. Darvin Adams behind him with 42. Drew Wolotarski still on the team at 22. And then if we look on the Rider side of things, rushing yards for them, they had William Powell, and that was basically it. And then Fajardo got a little bit. Receiving core, wow, the change is crazy. Taquille Williams, 108 receiving yards for him. William Powell, then with 47. Braden Linus with 40. Then Keon Schaefer-Baker with 25. Jamal Morrow behind him with 23. Then they also had Mitchell Picton, who got 1 target but no receptions. And so it's interesting to see how different the lineup is for Saskatchewan. With Winnipeg, there is some differences, but it's not that huge, to be honest. A lot of the same players. Again, Adam Bighill, Brennan Alexander, still had Casey Sales in that defensive line. Winston Rhodes gone. DeAndre Alford left for the NFL. Alden Darby's gone. Kyrie Wilson was here. Nick Taylor, Jackson Jeffcoat, who is gone. Drew Desjardins was part of the offensive line there. Willie Jefferson, obviously still around. Kenny Lawler, Drew Wolotarski, Zach Collaros, Dietrich Nichols, Jake Thomas. They had O'Leary Orange back then. Jesse Briggs, Mike Miller. And then they actually had Sergio Castillo for their field goals, and their punter was Mark Leggio. This was before Castillo left, and they had went to have Mark Leggio both kick and punt, which I'm sure every Bomber fan would be able to give you his opinion on that. And then Janarian Grant was still around, so that was fun. But that was kind of the last time the Riders were in the playoffs. Although not exactly a great frame of reference, simply because of how different the lineup is. So if there's anything I think the Riders can maybe take a little bit of comfort in is the lineup that lost to Winnipeg, very different lineup than what they got now. And so a little bit more of a question mark, which is better than necessarily having a negative light. But this will be a very, very important game, as every game is now that is left, both the East Final, West Final, and of course the almighty Grey Cup. And so one thing that I think will be an interesting aspect is that crowd. In prior years, it has been absolutely bananas, and I actually expect it to be much, much more harsh and much louder at this game, with it being Saskatchewan as the opponent, of course. Now, is there anything you want to mention, Rick, before? One thing I want to do is I wanted to look position by position and maybe do a bit of a comparison, but I wanted to kind of
That's where I was going next. I was just
you were going? Awesome.
Then
you start with that.
Okay, so we'll start with quarterbacks first.
Yep.
So you have Zach Claris, who went 342 for 488, 70.1 for completion percentage, 4,336 yards, 17
By the way,
touchdowns.
You can tell I'm a real Winnipegger, as it was free medium Slurpee day, so I took advantage of that. Slurpee capital of the world, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Fun fact.
And just before I continue, people think Hamilton is crazy with every Tim Hortons on every fucking, pardon my French, every flipping block. Winnipeg has a 7-Eleven on almost every bloody block.
Every block is seriously.
No word of a lie. Speaking from experience.
Yeah, no, I remember we were driving around and you're like, how many is there? And I'm like, Rick, there's more. There's not enough.
It's
7-Eleven is the only 7-Eleven is the only thing in Winnipeg that people will walk for.
I will be honest.
Everywhere for everything else except 7-Eleven.
If I was to drive you around to Hamilton, it's like every block.
We do still have a lot of Timmy's though. Just but 7-Eleven.
It's not even Timmy's. It's friggin' weed stores too.
Oh, we got so many weed stores.
It's like every intersection there's one.
Hey, you hear about the Winnipeg crack addicts, so it makes a lot of sense how you got all the dispensers.
So anyways, going back to what I was saying, 17 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 3.1 interception percentage. Now, here's the thing before I go over to Saskatchewan. I will give you guys the benefit of the doubt. He is Captain Clutch.
Yep.
When you need a touchdown in under 3 minutes, you know he's going to drive you down the field.
Yep.
Over to the Saskatchewan side. Trevor Harris went 260 for 259 attempts. He had a better completion at 72.4. He had 3,264 yards for 20 touchdowns and 9 interceptions for an interception percentage of 2.5. So if you look at the numbers, you would think that Trevor Harris would be the better one. But I still go with Captain Clutch. And
also a thing that's fair to compare here is to look at Claris's performance as of late compared to, in the sense of that's including their kind of the entire season, including his slump, which I'm not saying you shouldn't include it. Fair enough. That was him on the field. But saying necessarily that is exactly as relevant as the more recent Zach Collaros is important to realize, in the sense of if a quarterback plays very, very well and he maybe gets 6 touchdowns a game for 3 games and then shits the bed the rest of the season, I'm not going to make the argument that he's going to get 3 touchdowns or 6 touchdowns a game come playoffs time, because the more recent is going to be obviously the more relevant. Again, not saying it's not relevant at all. I'm just saying a little bit more relevant the more recent games for Winnipeg.
But also at the same time, both teams have had their slumps this year.
Yep. No, that is fair. Although I will say there is also an important thing to realize, and this is not necessarily a positive or a negative for Trevor Harris. He's played less games with and kind of a bit of an injury. And Shea Patterson, I think, kind of was the quarterback that was more kind of leading the charge for Saskatchewan during at least a decent portion of that slump. Although Trevor Harris was back, and it still took a little bit before they kind of get their mojo going. But yeah, no, I give the edge to Caleros. I think Caleros also has a little bit better playoff experience. And when I say better playoff experience, I'm not saying that Trevor Harris doesn't have as much playoff experience. I think he's made it to the postseason a similar amount. But we're talking about a guy who's led a team to 4 Grey Cup appearances and 2 Grey Cup wins. And it's just not comparable when it comes to playoff experience between the two. So I give it to Caleros, but I understand my biases in that. Which then brings us to... Do we want to go the O-line, or we want to go running backs first?
I was going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, offensive line, then defense.
Well, let's start with the house first. We'll start with the quarterback, running back, O-line, and then we'll go out to the receivers, and then we'll go. So that will bring us to the running backs, which for Saskatchewan has been a little bit of a kind of changing carousel, whether that's been Frankie Hickson, whether that's been AJ Ouellette, and then later in the year they bring in Raquel Armstead, and he's had some time there. But then on the Bomber side, there's been no question of who the running back has been there. It has been Brady Oliveira through and through, the reigning MOC, and most likely going to retain that title and possibly win MOP depending on how things go.
I thought you were gonna pull out some Paul Heyman fiasco.
The reigning, defending, undisputed MOC of the world, Brady Oliveira.
Your mom is probably banging on the door. Shut up in there!
No, I know. I'm gonna get a text saying to shut up, and that it's past midnight. And honestly, fair enough, Mom. You can absolutely send me that text, and I am sorry. But
so, Saskatchewan is by committee.
Yeah.
And Winnipeg is not.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing to realize: Saskatchewan, those are all 3 of them are good, capable running backs, and Ouellette, I think, has finally found his mojo a bit, and is finally kind of being kind of that power back presence that they've wanted. That really just, even though they didn't really get going much earlier in the season, they finally got it going with him. But I think if we're talking about best running back here, it's just not a comparison. Brady Oliveira is the man, has been. Start to finish. He has played all the games. He has gotten the accolades, and he's the one getting nominated for all the awards and winning some of them. And so I think quite handily it goes to Brady Oliveira. However, I think a guy like AJ Ouellette, in future years, if he's able to play throughout the whole season and play consistent the whole season, we could absolutely see him up there. I just not quite yet. I think it's still when we're talking about the kind of the war of the turf in the running backs. That's got to go to Brady Oliveira, no question. Would you say that's fair?
I mean, it is fair.
I think it's fair to say. Again, it's not. I'm not saying that Ouellette is not capable of putting up similar numbers. I'm just saying there's more evidence that Oliveira already has. And that with Ouellette, it really has been more of a depends on the game, depends. And also, we also have to factor in that we're talking about an offensive line that has worked very, very well with kind of a speed back and is still adjusting to a power back. But I think as of recent, his performance has probably been his best performance with Saskatchewan is probably these past few games. When utilizing the running backs to the fullest extent. So even though I think Brady Oliveira is the clear choice in terms of running back between the two, AJ Ouellette can absolutely, you cannot overlook him and say that he's not a threat. He's absolutely a threat, and he's something that the Bombers need to prepare for. And so that's kind of what I would say about the running backs. Now, If we get to the offensive line here, Rick, do you have any stats here on the offensive line? Maybe sacks given up by both squads here, or?
Give me a second and I can pull.
Yeah, if you could pull that up, just because that has been a bit more of a mixed bag. Now, one thing to keep in mind, both offensive lines have dealt with injuries, and actually dealt with injuries when playing against each other. Winnipeg went into their game on Labor Day. This was after Stanley Bryant had gotten heat stroke, so he was out of the lineup. And then I think Pat Neufeld was still out until he kind of came back in the Banjo Bowl. Saskatchewan, of course, got 2 offensive linemen were injured in that game on Labor Day. I believe it was 2. And so they had to deal with that. However, that was, to be fair, partway through the game. Wasn't the entire 60 minutes. But it's an important thing to factor in. And I don't think they were necessarily... I think it was Zach Fry who got injured, and I think there was another one. I think it was Peter Godwin, or I can't remember what the hell it was. Peter God something. For Saskatchewan, who was also injured, and then
it's
Peter Godber.
Godner.
Yeah, something like that. But anyways,
okay.
Do you have the stats here? Yeah.
If you take Harris's 19 sacks against, Shea Patterson's 14 against, you have 23, or sorry, you have 33.
Yeah.
And then if you compare that to Zach Claris's league leading 34 sacks,
yeah,
it's pretty much.
So it's pretty close, actually. So
cut dry down the middle.
Bit of a better performance here for the Riders.
But I mean, if you include Strevler's 1 and Terry Wilson's 1,
yeah, we'll include those
3 or 4 worse.
No, it's fair. It has to be included, as it does is another thing that falls on the offensive line. So that would mean that the Riders have a 3-sack lead, which, to be fair, in the span of 18 games really doesn't mean much, and really just shows how that this is going to be a relatively even battle between the offensive lines, and that it will really depend on the game, in the sense of that Winnipeg has had games where they've given up 4 or 5 sacks, and they've had games where they've given up not a single one. And so that variance does, so maybe a slight edge to Saskatchewan here, but I think the difference between the two is so minimal that it will really just depend on who shows up to play, and that when it comes to talent, that it's pretty even between the two squads, with a veteran presence in Winnipeg, like Stanley Bryant, and then in Saskatchewan, what's his name, who got nominated for the offensive lineman of the year? Was it Reed, or I'm trying to remember.
For who?
Or was it Logan Furland?
Logan Furland was.
Yeah, it was Logan Furland. Logan Furland, who at just 27 years old has done very well and nominated for Offensive Lineman of the Year from Saskatchewan. So congratulations to him on that. Might win. We'll have to see. But so definitely some good pieces on both sides, but pretty even.
You can tell the difference when Yoshi's not in the lineup for Winnipeg.
You probably can tell the difference when he's not in the lineup for Saskatchewan too.
Well, true.
So, and it's because, you want to know why? It's because Yoshi Hardrick is a damn good offensive lineman. And the only reason why some people didn't quite realize it is because he was always overshadowed by Stanley Bryant. In the sense of that, as good as Hardrick was, Bryant was just a little bit better. And so it's just an interesting thing to think about. But definitely a big hole. And Eric Lofton has done what he can to fill those shoes, and he's had mixed results. With some games he's done very, very well, and it's looked like Hardrick has never left, and in some games it looked like Hardrick is sorely missed. So really depends on the game. Now, should we go to the receiving corps?
We should.
Rick, I'm gonna let you take the lead on that.
So here's the thing. So if you take Dembski, Wilson, Lawler, I'll even throw Brady Oliveira in there because he did have 476
absolutely. If he got receiving yards, then he should be factored.
Then you have Wolotarski, Clarcius, and Wheatfall. Mm-hmm. So I won't even count Dalton Schoen because he only played 3 games. But if you count those 7 receivers, They're going up against MLS.
And that's also a fair thing to not count Schoen because he's not going to be playing in this game.
No.
You can actually take Clarcius out then probably. Because he's not going to be playing this game either.
No?
Well, no. Clarcius was released. But you should have Lucky Whitehead in there.
When was Clarcius released?
I think he was released like weeks ago, I thought. Unless I'm losing my mind.
Because practice rosters...
release someone else?
Practice rosters don't get released from the teams until...
they released Johnson. Josh Johnson. That's who it was.
Yeah.
They didn't release Clarcius. It was Josh Johnson. My apologies.
I was going to say, if someone released Clarcius, I'm pretty sure someone would have jumped up and jumped on him by now.
Yeah, no.
So anyway, so you have MLS, Keyshawn Johnson, Schaefer Baker. Can't count Sean Bain because Bain's out.
Yep.
Stearns. Mayers is out. A Joe, and then Picton. So it's kind of... I wouldn't say one side has it more than the other because there's people that have stepped up on... I'd say it's almost kind of even, but one side's going to have... I'd give like the kind of edge to Winnipeg, but not by much, only because they've had 2 1,000-yard receivers this year.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And the thing is that I think the edge could maybe go to Saskatchewan if Stearns was healthy. But because he's not, we have to factor that in. We have to factor in every factor that's going into this game, and also remove things like, again, Stearns, because he will not be playing in the game, and that's kind of confirmed.
And same with Mayers too.
Now, the only other thing question I have, and this is just a little bit unrelated, and we forgot to mention this earlier. Big Hill is also out with the season-ending injury, right? We were just not including him because it's known that he's out for sure, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, confirm. No, just good to ask a question about that now. Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think Winnipeg has a very slight edge here, and I say very slight in the sense of that Saskatchewan's receiving core has been very, very good. Again, Joe in their first game against Winnipeg had a really, really good game. Schaefer Baker, just a really good veteran presence there. And the rest of the squad has been able to get some good success. I remember MLS was a little bit of a pain in the backside during the Labor Day game. And they were able to put up a decent amount of yards, even in both games, despite the fact that they didn't win those.
So even though he only played 10 games this year, I would even go up a step and give Winnipeg the slight edge because there's a Captain Clutch on the offense. For a number, what is
which one? Are you just talking about Caleras?
Number 8. No, I'm talking about number 89 on your guys' receiving core, who will go in the dirty areas and get the ball when needed.
You're talking about Mr. Kenny Lawler. That is right.
Yes, I am.
Kenny Lawler has been an absolute game changer. He's gotten them points when they really, really need to, and him along
yards, anyways.
Him along with Caleros, when they start speaking each other's language, it really is magic on the field, and so. I think Winnipeg has a slight edge there. Now, let's go to the defense. And so we're going to start with the front of the house, right in the trenches, defensive line. Now, can you pull up the sacks and whatnot record here? Now, so if we're looking at both...
Like per player or for...
just of the unit. Or even if you have to pull up the two sides and you just add them all together.
Give me 1 second here.
Overall, Winnipeg's defensive line, it's really dependent on the game. Now, one thing to factor in that you probably won't be able to necessarily find stats on is a guy like Willie Jefferson. A lot of his really good plays are not necessarily when he's getting sacks, but even when he's using that massive wingspan and that height he has to knock those balls down. As the amount of times where a quarterback has stepped back, look for a pass. And Willie Jefferson's got his hand up right where he's looking to pass it and hits that bullet pass straight down to the ground. has been decent. Looking at a veteran presence like Jake Thomas at the defensive line, he's been a really, really key piece for Winnipeg for a very long time. And then at that other end spot, it's really rotated. Whether it's been a guy like Garbett or a guy like Haba in that spot, it's varied a decent amount, and so it's interesting to kind of interesting to see who Winnipeg is going to play here. I suspect that it'll probably be Garbett that starts here for Winnipeg, but it's a little bit unknown. At that other side, Woods has gotten some time. Schmeckel has gotten some time. Devin Adams had also got some time at that defensive tackle spot next to Jake Thomas. So it'll be interesting to see who they have starting. I'm assuming probably Woods will go in for Winnipeg, but it'll depend on what O'Shea is feeling there. And looks like Rick has something.
So you have Saskatchewan overalls 39 team wise, and Winnipeg only has 26.
Oh yeah.
Overall.
So probably a bit of the edges to Saskatchewan then, in the sense of like that's enough of a difference that I can definitely say that Saskatchewan has a bit of an edge there with Carney, Johnson, Brown, and Cox Jr. They've done very, very well. Now, what did you say about them? About which guy that maybe was injured or questionable or something? Of those four,
for which?
Did any of those members of the Saskatchewan Roughriders D line, were they on the injured list? I thought I remember one of those names being mentioned earlier. Carney, Johnson, Brown.
So Cox is in.
Cox is in.
Corte Moore's out. Lehner's in. And that's it.
Okay, so then the D line is does not affect the D line for them. So then, all in all, I think when it comes to sacks, I think Saskatchewan has a bit of an edge here. They've outperformed the Bombers at the defensive line. I think there's a bit of a veteran presence in Winnipeg that's very, very good. I think it's important to realize the capabilities of Willie Jefferson and knock that ball right out of the air on his side of things. But all in all, stats don't lie. The Riders have more sacks this year, so they've had a bit more success in the defensive line.
You know what matchup I'm actually looking forward to?
What are you looking forward to?
The Roland McGilligan Jr.
Milligan,
as people would always...
not McGilligan. Milligan, 1G.
Against Tyrell Ford.
Mr. Tyrell Ford. That's going to be one hell of a matchup. But we got to go to the linebackers first, Rick. We got to go to the linebackers first. And we'll actually start here with Saskatchewan.
I gotta pull up each team's depth chart to see who plays the three linebacker
a lot of guys
positions.
That they got in there. They got Herdman Reed, they got Revis, they got Thurman, they have Auclair, Avery, and Canadian Football Central's favorite, Mr. AJ Allen himself. Who got
wouldn't that kill you if he got stats against your team?
Oh, I'd hate it. I'd be happy for him, but I'd hate it because I just but yeah, we got to see his first career pick six, so that was cool. And then got to talk to him after.
That's true.
Was, so nice. But very, very formidable foe. If you can pull up the sacks and interceptions of the two units, is that possible? It's like Joe Rogan. It's like, hey, Jamie, can you pull that thing up? And then on the other side of it, we got the Bombers.
What did you need to know? Or what you want to know?
Sacks and interceptions.
Okay, so...
Just because they're kind of going to be playing both the rush and the pass.
Like, as a whole team?
As a unit, yep.
Okay, so Winnipeg has 26 sacks and...
For their linebackers, right?
Oh, for their linebackers. Okay,
for the linebackers specifically, yep.
Okay, so I got to see here. So you guys have Cole, Jones, and Cramdy.
And you're not going to factor in Adam Bighill.
No. So Cramby has 2 sacks, no interceptions. Brian Cole has 1 interception, no sacks, and Jones has 1 and 1.
Well, Ayers and Griffin.
Ayers is 1 and 1.
Yep.
And Griffin is 1 sack, no interceptions.
Any for Goche or no?
No.
Okay. And then on the Rider side of things.
Okay, so you have Reeves, Herdman. Oh, now which Herdman is this? Because there's 2 freaking Herdmans. Okay.
Number 58.
No, I know, but on the actual stats, it doesn't give you
their number.
Like, no, it doesn't.
Just add both of them.
Okay, well, I can tell you that neither one of them got a sack.
Okay.
Any
interceptions?
I mean, if you include Thurman as the designated American,
yeah,
he has 1 sack and 2 interceptions. You have Eclair, who has 1 sack, 3 interceptions. Revis has 4 sacks, no interceptions.
So
the most of.
So I'd probably say that then there's probably again another instance where both very, very competent defenses, but probably a slight edge to Saskatchewan. At least in the blitz where they're able to get some sacks. I think interceptions. I think they're a little bit closer between the two, but I think there's definitely a disparity with the sacks for Saskatchewan.
The top two for each team for interceptions is Ford and Nichols.
But that's now you're getting into the rest of the secondary. We're just
no. I'm just saying, like, if you were to compare the two teams,
Ford and Nichols
for Winnipeg, and then you have Milligan and Sales for the Riders.
And so I think we'll give the slight edge here to Saskatchewan in the linebacker core. I think a guy like Tony Jones has done very well. Now another thing with a guy like Tony Jones, a lot of his impact that he's made has also been on special teams. He's been a just beast on special teams for Winnipeg, so that's important to consider. But then, so I think we'll say that Saskatchewan has a slight edge in the linebacker core, and so now we should get on to the secondary. Is that fair?
Fair enough.
So the rest of the secondary, those halfbacks, those cornerbacks, the defensive backs on this team. Let's take a look at Winnipeg first. We'll look at Bonds, Nichols, Holm, Ford, Kelly, Alexander. We'll include the safety in there, and then either of the Hallett brothers. Interceptions.
Okay, so Ford had 7, Nichols had 3.
Okay, 10.
Bonds had 1, so that's 11.
11.
Did you say Michael Ayers?
No.
Oh, and that's it.
No for Brandon Alexander.
None for Brandon Alexander.
Kelly.
None for Kelly. So the only ones that actually had interceptions for your team this year: Ford, Nichols, Jones, Ayers, Bonds, Cole, and that was it. Only those 6 people.
Holm did? I thought you said he had 1. Or was he just getting defensive tackles? Just defensive tackles for him then. So that's 11 totaled up on Saskatchewan, looking at specifically the defensive backs.
So you have, I gotta swap here.
So you'd be looking at Henderson, Milligan Jr., Lacombo, Fields, Sales, and Onyeka.
Okay, so Roland has 8.
8.
Sales has 4.
12.
Fields has 1.
13.
And I'm just trying to see where this guy is. Henderson, no, and Lacombo, no.
None for either? Okay. And then any for Onyeka or no?
No.
Okay, so again, I think this is another instance. So what does that leave? Was that 12 or? Because that was
that leaves
4, or is that getting 13?
12, 13.
13. Okay, so pretty close. So 11 and 13. So I guess again another slight edge here to Saskatchewan. So it looks like the kind of the overall look at the defense is that Saskatchewan's is slightly better than Winnipeg's. Um, I think this it's within the realm though that it definitely will depend on the game and depend on the performance in the sense of that if Saskatchewan is able to play the lockdown defense that they're able to, and Winnipeg's not able to get points, is Winnipeg able to push far enough for Sergio Castillo to be their guy and really drive that score up? As they've won games like that, but then they've also lost games because they can't get into that end zone. So that's kind of an important thing to factor in. But we'll look at the last kind of thing to look at, and then
an important stat.
And I think we're gonna, and I think afterwards we'll make our prediction. Is that fair?
Carter, at this point, Carter's like, we don't even need to look at these stats, because we know this one person has the edge over the other.
Sergio motherfucking Castillo. I don't care if the video gets demonetized after that. Sergio Castillo. Man, absolute game changer here. Not that Brett Lothar is a bad kicker, he's not, but Sergio Castillo is just simply on another level when it comes to kickers and being able to hit that long ball and get it done. And he is being able to come in clutch in the most clutch of times. And so that's got to go to him. Now, I think we've probably got to wrap this up soon. I'm getting text from my brother. He wants to go to bed.
What does that have to do with anything?
What does that have to do with anything? Well, I'm not exactly being totally quiet, but and it's also almost 1 a.m. But all things considered, Rick, who do you got? Because
for this game wise,
we know kickers is Castillo, but when it comes to this game, I'm obviously taking my Bombers. I'm looking for.
I will say one thing
once again.
So my honest opinion, it's split down the middle, even and even. The deciding factor is the loudest fans of the CFL is going to be the deciding factor. He's like, but before we end,
say the words. You are going with
the Bombers.
Good. You have to have it on record.
So, just before we end the video, the All CFL Awards All-Stars came out today. So, remember how we had the East and the West before?
Yes. We
have now the full league. So, I'm just going to go through it quickly, and then we can end the video. Quarterback, Bo Levi Mitchell. Running back, Oliveira. Receivers is McInnes, Hardy, Bagleton, Eugene Lewis, Tim White. Offensive line at centers, David Beard from Hamilton, Ferland from Saskatchewan, Ryan Hunter from Toronto, Bryant from Winnipeg, and Allen from Toronto. On defensive line, we have Jefferson, Malden IV, Serezna, and Micah Johnson from Saskatchewan. Beverett, Nick Anderson from Edmonton, Reeves from Saskatchewan, Tyrell Ford and Sales as cornerbacks. Ford from Winnipeg, Sales from Saskatchewan. Roland for halfback on the one side from Saskatchewan. Webb on the other side for Ottawa. And for safety, Marc-Andre Dequoy. And then, this is where it's going to drive you nuts. Sean White got the kicker. Jake Julian got the punter. And Janarian Grant got the special teams.
Intense eye roll. Is what it is, but at the end of the day, I got my Bombers winning the World
Also, one last plug.
Yeah.
Do not forget to check us out this Saturday. We are doing a double stream for me, stream and a half for Carter, because Carter will be going to the West Final Saturday evening.
That's right.
So CFL Plus, you best be there. Be there, be square.
Fair enough. So make sure you guys tune in for that. But I think that's pretty much all we got here. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe if you have not already.
Don't make it bag.
Bell. Helps out the channel a ton. That's right. Go Bombers! And then If you're listening,
Brady Oliveira.
I can't yell that. I gotta make sure that people can sleep. And then, of course, if you're listening to this on Spotify, give us 5 stars.
Please.
We really appreciate it.
It's 1:45 here in the morning. Who needs sleep?
Without further ado, we will see you guys next time.